Hi, comrade. Welcome to our podcast series. These episodes feature the best of Lab-Left, an international forum organized by Szikra Movement in collaboration with Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. We gathered in Budapest in November 2024 in order to discuss how to win from the left. Thanks for tuning in. The Local Powers panel focused on municipal politics. It featured Marin Zivkovic, MP from Mozamo, Croatia, Maja Wroblewska from MGN, Warsaw, Poland, Tomasz Soproni, the mayor of an inner city district, Budapest, Aydin de Kerdem, Labour cabinet member for Wandsworth, UK, and Marisa Escalante from Madrid, Spain. The panel was moderated by Orsolya Sudár. Okay, so we're just out of a Local Powers panel moderated by our very own Sudár Orsolya. Thanks for the moderation.
Thank you for asking me.
And we really enjoyed it. Lots of interesting points. What are your main takeaways as a moderator?
That I think it was Marin who said that all parties and organizations have to be adaptable to every situation that might come up. So I think whenever we're trying to organize and reflect on or bring in new topics into public life, we have to keep in mind that nothing is forever, and our internal structures, our sayings, everything has to be adaptable to a new situation so that we can reach newer and newer people around us. I think that was, for me, the most important, but it was
Yeah, I think that's very relevant. Like on the left, often once we've established a structure, we kind of believe this is the structure, and it's very hard for us to change it or to change strategies and tactics. And what was interesting was to see like a diversity of strategies on the panel itself.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that I think it was Tomasz Soproni who said the importance of lobbyist groups, and how they make it harder for everyone to do what they want. So even if you're in power, you will have a very hard time doing what you want to do if you have lobbyists and other interest groups to manage. And that was a reminder that this is why it's important to have institutional positions as well as organizational and positions.
So we had different panelists from different regions, Poland, but also Spain and the UK and Hungary, very different political realities. Did you feel these different perspectives could really talk to each other, or there was like a big divide?
It was absolutely, like connecting. We don't have to say. No, I think they reflected on the issue of municipalism and how to reach people perfectly. I don't think these challenges are so different within the EU. I don't think it's so much different anywhere else, actually. So I think they reflected on each other's topics quite well. They are faced with the same challenges from within and from the outside as well. So it's not so different.
Did anything surprise you?
Surprise? I don't think so.
You're hard to surprise.
I've seen it all. No, I think. For instance, in Maja's speech from Poland, when she mentioned the campaign that they had against the opening of alcohol shops after 10 p.m. So they were petitioning for the closing of alcohol shops after 10 p.m. That was very interesting because I think this is something that we have to be brave enough to talk about, whether, alcohol shops, like conflicting issues. When they come up, we have to make a stance, and it was really interesting that they actually could make a change in that regard. So, and they petitioned, and they did a poll, what people thought about it, and it turned out like 60% of people actually would vote for the closing of alcohol shops after 10 p.m., which is something that we wouldn't expect.
I found her points about participatory democracy also very interesting and on point. Like we often try to be participatory only to realize that it's like only the middle classes or people who are already part of the process who get a voice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one last point, maybe I thought to bring up. Aiden was talking about how people in insecure housing situations or homeless people would sometimes be basically evicted from the area.
Yeah.
And then they kind of went to other parts of London in order to reach these people. So often when we think about local politics, it's very local, but in fact, it's a much more mobile thing. And you also, as someone very active in your own district, is it something you've considered, perhaps, that the district doesn't end where the district ends?
Of course, I think most of the issues that we deal with are non-only local issues. What he also said is that sometimes the local is the hardest level on which you can fight the fight. It's a little bit easier to do it like nationwide because you don't have to go as deep into talking to people, convincing people. So I think that's why we feel that local issues are only local, because that's where we have to fight the fight. But of course, parking, housing, even street cleaning, it doesn't end at the end of the district. So
it doesn't. Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and the local national issue is also interesting because some of the representatives here were involved in national parties, whereas others were very local. So it also shows that there's not one way to do it.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of a recurring theme. Thanks, Orsi.
Thank you.
Városi tornyok most oly némán álltok, boldogságra, virágcsokorra várok.
So thank you all for being here. Thank you for the panelists for being here also. I hope the previous sessions were making you think enough so that you can prepare extra questions for this panel as well, where you can, at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A session as well. So please prepare questions in the meantime. I would like to ask a Szikra member to, at the end of the panel, to help me with the microphones if there are questions from the audience. So whoever thinks, okay, Levi, thank you. So let me welcome our panelists, Marin Živković, a member of the Croatian Parliament, a city councilman of the city of Zagreb, and a board member of in the Zagrebianaš political party. Thank you for being here. And then Marisa Escalante, who is a sociologist, a culture manager, and a member of the Madrid Assembly, serving as a spokesperson for culture. We have Aydin Dikardam, who is a Labour councillor and cabinet member for housing in Shaftesbury and Queensbury, if I said it right. And then we have Maja Wroblewska, a member of the Miasto Jest Nasze, the biggest urban movement in Poland. And we heard a lot about you in a conference last week in Warsaw, so thank you for being here. And we have Tamás Soprani, who is has been the mayor of Terezváros since 2019 and a founding member of Momentum, the Liberal Party in Hungary. So thank you for being here. I have segmented our session into 5 topics. I hope we will have time for all of them. But first, just tell me about your movements and political parties and what your journey into leftist or leftist-leaning politics was like. And we're going to start with you.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here. I'm really glad I can be a part of this. Well, our political party really started in the mid-2000s, like 2007, 2008, when we had big student protests in Croatia. We were fighting against tuitions, and at the same time, we were defending in another action. We were defending one public square against privatization, and that was kind of the basis of our movement. A lot of people from there went to the NGO sector, work in a lot of other fields, and basically at some point we felt powerless in that context and started to build a party. From there, we had quite of success. We ended up in charge of the city of Zagreb, And in the last year's elections, we doubled the number of our MPs in the parliament, and after that we even won one seat in the European Parliament. So from kind of humble beginnings, not so long ago, now we are kind of a third biggest party in the state, and the most left party in the parliament.
That is. It is to.
So sure. You said totally, and I said, see,
Hello, mình Kenneth. Many thanks to Szikra, especially to Julia, Aaron, and Ivan for tell us and everything, and Rosa Luxemburg Institute, and for making that meeting that's for meeting Budapest possible. And also thank you all the people who have worked voluntarily and subsidy, so that today we can gather here with a broad representation.
With a board. Oh. Okay, many thanks to Szikra, especially to Julia, Aaron, and Ivan for help us in everything, and Rosa Luxemburg is featured for making this Lab-Left meeting in Budapest possible. Sorry, because I have to read because my English is not perfect, but I will try to give my speech in English and make sure you understand me. I came from Spain, from the city of Madrid, the capital of our country. My political party, the name is Más Madrid. I am a regional deputy in Madrid Assembly in the culture area. And then we can speak more. Thank you.
Hello, is that working? Hi, my name is Aidan Deekadem. I'm a Labour Party councillor in London, in a borough called Wandsworth, which is about 350,000 people. It's South London, kind of just on the central part where the Thames is. And I got politicised through basically living under what had been 44 years of a Conservative-run district and seeing what was happening to the area, particularly around housing. So that part of London had been historically famous for selling off council housing, selling off public housing, and also for bringing in multinational developers to come and build huge luxury apartments while many people were homeless or on the waiting list. And I saw how my own neighbourhood was being gentrified, how there was huge inequality. And I was of a moment in the Labour Party where it was quite exciting and left-wing because Jeremy Corbyn had just been elected as a leader. So there were lots of young people getting involved. Obviously, contexts have changed, but locally in our area, we've managed to maintain some of that energy and some of that politics, particularly around housing, particularly around council housing. And so that is basically how I got involved in politics.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for having me. I represent Miasto jest nasze, which in English is The City is Ours. We are an urban movement based in Warsaw, Poland, and we advocate for the development of social housing, public transport, and environmental protection. This year we had local elections, and actually 16 of our grassroots activists were elected as the city or district councils. And frankly, 16 deputies may not sound like a lot, but for us it was actually a huge success because for Warsaw, this is a historic event. This is the first time we actually have people from social movement as elected deputies. And it's important because for the last 17 years, the ruling Liberal Party had a single majority. So basically, they could pass any legislation they wanted to. And this is difficult because they have very strong connections to the banking and real estate sector. So now we have this foot in the door, and we hope that this is a change for better. And as for me, I joined Miasto jest nasze 3 or 4 years ago. And I used to work as a spokesperson during our last local campaign. I was responsible for the co-creation of our campaign and public image. And now I actually work as a person for conflict resolution in our association. so to make us stronger internally and be less prone to burnout. Thank you.
Hope this one works. Yes, it does. Thank you for having me on this panel. And you've asked us to introduce our party's movements. And I guess that most Hungarian-speaking audience members know Momentum. But still, I was one of the founders of the party back in 2015, let's say. That was the beginning of the movement. And it was founded by an ideologically very colorful group of people, of 140 young people. And the first big campaign was Olympia, as you might know. That was for a referendum, and we were against the bid itself, the Olympics bid, and it was rather successful back then. And I have, as I said, it's a very colorful ideologically, the party is. And I have always been a bit of a left-leaning dissident within the party. And you also asked what led us towards this direction. I think I can pinpoint a single moment in my life as well where I had an epiphany. Basically, I come from a working-class Catholic family. My father was a sexton. My mother was disabled, retired pensioner. And I got a good education. I was much better off than my parents when I became a translator. And there was this single moment, like 14, 15 years ago, when at the end of the month, after paying the bills, I went to the shop, to the grocery market, to just do the shopping. And I realized that I can buy things without actually having to look at the price tags. And since then, I believe that freedom doesn't start when you can say anything that you want, where you can do some things, but when you can actually at least put food on your table after paying the bills and buying things for yourself at the end of the month and your family without actually having to do that. So that's what I am working for in Hungary and in Kelet-Európából.
Thank you so much. I think these issues still, are part of the epiphanies of many, many people who realize that we don't start the same way our lives. And yes. So the first set of questions will be about municipalism. All of you work tirelessly for municipal goods and interest for the people through the system of municipalities. And we have seen, and this is part of Szikra's backstory as well, that we have come together to promote the power of municipal representation. And when we began this journey in 2019, the prime examples for us were Barcelona and Comú. That was something that we imagined we could do. And at that time, it seemed that municipalism was kind of like a beacon of hope in the face of capitalist neoliberal agendas. And we hoped that anything that we wanted to achieve for a more just world would come through municipal representation. And my first question would be to Marisa. What lessons can you draw from municipalist movements like Más Madrid to ensure resilience in the face of political setbacks that we have seen in the past couple of years, especially with the electoral defeat of Ada Colau? I think it works now.
Hello? Yes. In 2015, I was the first deputy mayor and councillor for education, culture, and citizen participation in a small municipality in the community of Madrid, Talamanca de Jarama. Is with fewer than 5,000 inhabitants. It was 4 fascinating years as a government councillor for a progressive left-wing neighborhood association where we tried to implement real progressive measures for the town's residents. We promoted citizen participation measures, carried out numerous cultural projects always related to cultural rights, access to culture, the right to identity, respect for diversity and accessibility, worked to preserve historical memory and cultural heritage, and implemented important ecological and environmental transition measures, among other things. Do you understand me? Yes? Thank you. And now I am a regional deputy for Mas Madrid, a regional party of Community of Madrid. Mas Madrid was created at the beginning of 2019 with the goal of competing in the regional election for the Community of Madrid. It was defined as a citizen platform made up of people committed to political change, establishing ecological sustainability, feminist and social justice as its ideological framework. The experience of years of work governing the Madrid City Hall from 2015 to 2019 with our predecessor party, Ahora Madrid, and since 2019 being the opposition to the Popular Party is the Spanish right, during the pandemic have places us to forefront of the progressive bloc. We are the leaders of the opposition at the regional and municipal levels, and we are the only territorial force in Madrid that talked about the really matters, and the only force that keep growing and inspiring the citizen. In just 4 years, we have extended the territorial presence of the party in local institutional way. Mas Madrid has 3 female representatives, Mónica García, Manuela Bergerot, and Rita Maestre, and we have representation from 1 Minister of Health, Mónica García, 1 senator, 2 state deputies, 25 regional deputies in Madrid, 1 mayor, and 92 councillors, 21 in government and 71 in opposition, and 126 neighborhood representatives in Madrid City Hall. Mas Madrid has representation in 46 municipalities in the Community of Madrid, 8 in government, and 38 in opposition, which means Mas Madrid is present in municipalities with over 6 million inhabitants, accounting for 91% of the region. Our municipal government in most municipalities are in coalition with progressive left-wing parties. Our local governments, the name, I say, is Alcorcón, Casarrubuelos, Coslada, Manzanares El Real, Parla, Rivas Vacia Madrid, y Velilla de San Antonio. The current Mas Madrid Party was founded in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. The organizational structure, including the regional table and executive committee, were created through many Zoom meetings in the pandemic. During this time, the party's organizing secretariat working on preparing an analysis and diagnostic of territorial groups and the representation achieved after the 2019 election. Participating in the regulatory process to form municipal and sectorial assemblies, developing a strategic plan to identify needs and achieve the organization growth objectives across the Community of Madrid. A significant amount of work in just 4 years to achieve an organization that is decentralized, meeting the local needs of municipalities and their diversity, not just Madrid City with over 3 million inhabitants, train it with tools to work in assemblies, and cohesive, promoting collaborative work with project management, always working in defense of public service, health, education, social service, culture, and social justice. And now, Más Madrid has a multi-level structure with a representative from each level of institutional representation to work in a conditioned manner of all the measures and initiatives we work on at the local level to translate them into proposal at the regional or state level. For example, Más Madrid has implemented Solar School and the renaturalization of courtyards or measures to adapt classroom to high summer temperatures due to the climate change in areas where we govern locally. As the leader of the opposition at the regional level, we have brought these proposals to the Madrid Assembly, showing that if something is possible in a municipality, it can be done at regional level as well. And more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Your introduction, and I think this was a very good introduction to the main issues sometimes at the heart of grassroots movements and electoral pragmatism, that sometimes we end up representing thousands and millions of people, which is a huge step from representing your own movement inside your organization. So my second question would be to Marina and Maya, who have vast experience in grassroots organization, whether or where you can pinpoint the conflict of interest between grassroots organization and institutional politics. Maya, first.
Sure, thank you. So I think it's very important when we have grassroots activists and also deputies, because then deputies have also bigger access to the needs of average citizens. And I think it's important because when you are not sometimes inside the council, it's easier to look at the hands of the politicians and control what's happening. So at the city scale, I wouldn't say that, for example, we have a problem with separation of powers when it comes to the intersection of public officials and legislature. But when it comes to, for example, intersection of public officials and private sector. And this is a huge issue in Warsaw, actually. And I think a couple years ago, it was probably our breakthrough moment when we published and developed a map of privatization in Warsaw, in which we basically showed that there is a criminal network in the city town hall, which is responsible for mass evictions of citizens, for the liquidation of public schools and parks. And we managed to arrest people who were in this map. And actually, we managed to dismissal of actually high-rank officials, to vice mayors and the head of the housing office in Warsaw. And it was also important because we showed to the public the effects of privatization in Warsaw, that is actually a bad thing. And we were able to show that almost 55,000 people were directly affected in it in Warsaw. And I think it was a big success because back then we were quite a small movement. We were, well, maybe not very small, but we were 150 people. And we weren't known before at all. And we managed to change the national legislation. So actually one of our members after this case was invited to the social committee, which was debating on the bill, which would, decrease the pathological cases of the reprivatization. And the bill was passed. And now it's much better in this case. So I think it's about this also control of public officials. And it's also connected to the law. Many people, especially not from the middle class, but from the working class, are afraid of legislature because of the nomenclature, because of the language, which is very expert, and they don't feel like this is something they can have access to. And the reality is actually quite different, and we try to educate people about it. This is a short anecdote, but it was very interesting for me when I was doing research, I think 2 years ago, in squats, anarchist squats in Warsaw. And it turns out that squads in Warsaw they have a very good legal expertise, because a couple people from them study law at university, and they then do this bottom-up education about it. So, when you think about the stereotypical anarchist, you don't think about an expert in law. And this is actually, the picture is very different. So I would say this is about the control and also the transfer of knowledge between those two sectors.
Thank you, Aline.
Well, so when we went to our first elections in 2017, we won like one seat in coalition with other minor parties on the left. We won 4 seats altogether, and we were biggest surprise story of that election. And in 4 years after that, we won the city of Zagreb. But in the meantime, we started, we had party assemblies about every topic. We discussed it long hours. Everybody had to participate, and that's how we started. And I think that's a good start when you're building a movement. But after 4 years, we won 600 places in neighborhood councils, around 23 or 4 in the city council. We had a mayor, and we just couldn't keep doing it like that anymore. We had to change our party system. We had to change how we do things. For some time, for a year after we won that city, because remember, you come to the power, but there are still a lot of people there who do not support you, who are in the structures who work against you. So for around 2 years, we didn't develop our party any further. Our party was on hold. We had to manage the city, and only after 2 years we could come back to developing our institution, our processes, and how we involve people. So for around 2 years, we didn't accept new people to come in. We didn't want to repeat the mistakes of other parties that had fast growth, and after that strong decline. It happened to the 2 other left parties before us. They had in 1 year from 0% to 15-20% on the national level, and a year after that they were gone from the politics in Croatia, because they accepted a lot of people who they didn't necessarily agree. There was no consensus. There was no building of something stronger, and of course, after a short time, they all fought amongst each other. We try to take a different route, to go slower, but further. Let's say that was kind of our agenda, to not expand too quickly, but to be sure that we can manage our processes. And now after 3 years, almost 4 years in power, we are started again to develop our structures. We went national and gather similar initiatives like our own in Zagreb, and now are developing also new rules of participation and how people can get involved, because for us it's still very important for most members to be able to participate, so that it's not a delegation system or something like that, but it just cannot be the same as it was. And I think that's the lesson we had to learn in some time, that we have to be ready to change all the time, so that our growth won't be over. It will just continue to change us all the time, and we'll have to adapt. So in that context, I think scaling is just that, to be able to go from small to big, and accept that those ideal situations when you can really be involved in every decision are not feasible. you have to, if you want to grow as a political party, you have to be able to put trust in those other people you gather that they will do a good job without you, and that's the key.
I think that's a very important lesson to all political organizations. And feel free to reflect on this, Aiden and Tamás, as well. But I would also like to ask you how you manage a very similar process between the constituents and the institution, because I think when there's distrust between or within the organization to the representatives of the organization itself, a similar thing happens when you represent your constituents as well. So how do you maintain public trust? But feel free to answer the question on the organization question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on that we won 2 years ago. And like I said, it was the first time the Labour Party had won in Wandsworth since the 1970s. And I feel exactly the same way as you. 2 years we've been governing. We've had to learn how to govern. We've had to learn how the local state functions. We've had to deal with this power. We've always been in opposition. We've always been the activists, the people banging on the door trying to get policy change. And now I can just write on a piece of paper and the policy happens. You know, it's crazy. But it's what we fight for decades. But then when it happens, you become obsessed with that focus. And I think that 2 years in, we're trying to now rebalance a little bit our relationship with our party structures and our membership, because I do think our membership are probably slightly frustrated that we're off now in the town hall making the decisions, and many of them don't feel that they can participate in the way that they used to when we had more time. And then the second thing is the constituents and the necessary transition that I have seen, whereby when you enter the council, you often are going to put constituent issues above membership issues, which makes a lot of sense. But for anyone on the left, that pressure and that challenge, particularly in a swing constituency, is very strong, and you can see it. Now, the way that we've tried again to navigate that is to bring in the constituents who don't have voice and aren't active and don't know the structures themselves. So there are always going to be well-educated, university-educated, probably own their own home residents who understand the council structures, and therefore in any consultation we run, in any public forum, they're always there. They have the good legal knowledge. And so we're having to kind of break out and get to those invisible residents. They're working late night shifts, they come home, they're voiceless. Particularly in my area of homelessness, many of our statutory homeless families are placed out of the borough in temporary accommodation. They don't even get to vote on the authority that is in charge of them. So we're setting up forums where we go and find them and we bring them in and we bring their voice into the town hall. So if we try and build council housing, for instance, public housing, we'll often have the general public, the people who live near it will be very upset. They don't want public housing near them. But we'll make sure that families who will live in that public housing get to come along and be part of the process to try and make sure their voices are part of it. But there is a tension, and 2 years in, we're trying to fine-tune and work out how we maintain our foot in the movements whilst also having, and I have to say, the joy of being able to make change because we now run things.
Well, I think as a mayor, you kind of in a natural way get and are getting a bit farther and farther from your own organization because your primary you primarily have to serve all the constituents, even those who voted against you. And what I have always said to my coalition partners, because we were quite a colorful coalition back in 2019, it was like 5 or 6 parties. I always told them that I can work together with anyone whose primary loyalty is towards all Terézváros citizens and not their own party. And we have had difficulties. We have had conflicts because of this in the past few years, because some people thought that they have to serve their party at least on the same level as their constituents. And that is, I think, in a way, you earn the public's trust by always showing them that you serve them as well. We actually worked together with the Fidesz members as well, because they had some ideas within the council, and they came to me and said, let's do this. And it was a great idea. And I never asked them, I knew which party they belonged to, but I never really cared about their colors. And I think that can lead to conflicts within your own party even. But certainly I think it's a must to have your first and utmost priority to show loyalty towards your citizens. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the core challenge with collaborations and coalitions, that you might have to work with the people that you don't necessarily agree with on most of the issues. But we might find ourselves also in Szikra in the situation that we might have to collaborate or work together with a Fidesz representative on maybe some certain issue. And the next section will be about collaboration and participation. I'm just realizing how nicely these topics are connected. And my first question would be to Marin about the challenges in making certain types of coalitions and collaborations with unions and grassroots movement and housing movements from within the power grab. And I assume that sometimes these things can get hard because these movements tend to maybe a little bit oppose whoever is in power. What's your experience with this?
Well, to just give the context, first, as I said, many of us really came from the NGO sector, and when we started our political journey, we kind of empty that space out. So unfortunately, in Croatia, in Zagreb, there is little power from NGO sector at this moment. But sure, you're right. There is also a tension when we came in power. There is always different understandings of what can be done fast or at what pace it can be done. But I think now, after 3 years, I really welcome, especially when it comes from the left, every pressure to implement something, because in a way it gives us more power to implement our policies. To implement policies, I was surprised when you said that you just write it and it happens. I don't have that data experience. It's always hard. It's always uphill battle. We have a whole media infrastructure often against us, especially when there are hard left policies. We have a business sector against us. So it's always you always have to have a good argumentation, a good legal background, because they try to find every legal way to oppose your decisions. So it's useful when you have support from the left, but it's also useful when they're pulling you to the left, because we are getting bigger and bigger. Our organization is getting bigger and bigger, and the more we grow, the diverse we are in a way. So I would say also that since we won the elections in 2021, a lot of our members got more to the left than they were when we got elected. So governing for them in their neighborhood councils was also educational in that sense. I don't know what's how to resolve those conflicts, that there will always be, but we really try to, in our policy, to have the more participatory models that we can. So when we are doing spatial planning of the city, it's participatory. When we are making neighborhood budgets, it's participatory. So we are just trying to involve as many people as possible, and our program that we went to those elections was very participatory in a sense that we put a public kind of poll for people to write to us what do they want to change, and we got thousands and thousands of responses that we read all of them, and that's how we made our political program for that elections when we won elections. But politics is always it's not always, but it's often a conflict between different visions, and we cannot have all same visions at the same time. So
I think it's Maya who maybe might have some good practices on the good way to include as many people and movements in your decision making. And your movement criticizes this tokenistic way of participatory decision making. Can you explain what that is to you, this tokenistic fake inclusion, and what your better practices would be?
Of course. So at our movement, we are all for the public participation. This is a great tool. But as you have pointed out, it's often tokenistic. In Poland, social consultations or citizens' assemblies are not legally binding. So it's very common that the council commission them and then totally disregard the results of it. So, for example, for the last 2 years, we have been campaigning to ban selling of the alcohol after 10 p.m. In shops. Experience of different cities have shown that it decreases the criminality rates and the noise pollution, especially in the poorer districts where most 24 hours alcohol shops are located. And independent research showed that 60% of Warsavians are actually for the ban. So the council commissioned the consultations, which only proved this result. And we are half year later, and basically nothing happened. Like, president totally disregards and shuts on the topic. So, public funds were spent, and it was basically a waste of them. So we see, so this is one problem. And another is that often public participation is mostly for the middle class, because it's usually people with higher cultural, financial, or social capital who take part in them, who feel like they have this expert knowledge to give their opinion. And working class often don't understand, or they just don't know that public consultations are happening. So what do we do about it? Firstly, we educate people, especially from their working class background, and we often offer them to assist them on the social consultations. So we go there in a group, so they don't feel intimidated as easily, and they feel that their voice is actually heard. We also do this with the city council meetings. In theory, city council meetings should be opened to everyone, but in practice, individual citizens often cannot go inside. So when we go in a group, they give up and they let us in, and we can raise our voice on particular important issues. And I think the second solution, so the one is the change also of law to make public participation, at least to some extent, legally binding for the authorities. And the second solution, in my opinion, like long-term one, would be the more common implementation of the citizens' assemblies. They are most cost-consuming and time-consuming, for sure, but I believe they are more efficient and inclusive, because if you have proper citizens' assemblies, you have to make sure that you have representatives of different social groups, including class, gender, minorities, people with disabilities, and so on. And secondly, people who participate in citizens' assemblies should be paid for doing so. So they don't lose their income at work, and actually their employers are notified that their employees were drawn to the public participation, and they can't argue against it. So this is once again the case of legislation. And last but not least, public citizens' assemblies also have facilitators, so people who make sure that each voice is heard, and not only of people with, for example, higher capital, cultural capital. I'm not saying that they are perfect. They also have major disadvantages, but for me, this is a huge step forward. And we actually cooperate with various NGOs in Warsaw who conduct such citizen assemblies. Usually they are sponsored by the public funds, and then the NGO runs it. And in a couple years ago, we actually managed with other social movements to have Warsaw Climate Panel. And on one hand, it was a huge success, but on the other, we come back to the law issue, that it's not binding. And I'm actually a member of the overseeing board of the implementation of the results of the panel. Well, the thing is that they don't implement it. And each month we meet, we talk to them that they do it at too much slow pace, or they just don't do it. And there's no sanction to push them to change it. So I would sum it up like this. Thank you.
Tamás, you also had a controversial campaign this year. Your district was the first one in Hungary to ban Airbnb. And I would like you to share with the group what your participatory process was like. How did you know whether this would not be a complete fail from the... I mean, I'm sure you weren't completely sure, but what were the impressions? What methodologies did you use from office, and what collaborations we collaborated with Szikra in the campaign? But what other methodologies did you use too?
Okay, if I answered all your questions, then we would be here for quite a while. But thank you. First of all, thank you for helping us, helping me especially, not only on a political but on a personal level as well. I mean, thank you as a Szikra member as well, because it was quite a hard time for us. Firstly, there was no political party movement whatsoever that would be on the pro-ban side, basically, and Szikra was the only one that basically joined me in this campaign fight, or whatever it was, because it was the most brutal campaign that I have ever participated in. And as I said, I'm thankful on a personal level as well, because all the hatred, all the anger of the property owners, of Airbnb owners, were channeled towards me for quite a while, at least until the moment that Szikra joined in. So thank you for getting some bullets as well. But what we actually intended, it was quite strange, because we were considering for a while if it should be a normal referendum or something different, which is not legally binding, or it's not by law. Because if we had a referendum, then, for example, the texting, the wording of the question would have had to be quite legal, in a sense. It wouldn't be easily understandable for those people that you mentioned as well, who are less academically educated or whatever. And so, for example, in the question, we didn't use the legal expression for Airbnbs in Hungarian. It's called private or other category lodgings and so on. But we use Airbnb type lodgings. And I think we try to open by this as well, this to the most, the widest audience, the widest public as we could. Also, we didn't want to hold a proper referendum, because that can be held only in one single day, from the morning to the evening in Hungary. And so we decided that it should take 2 weeks, and you can vote through sending in your documents online as well, and of course in person as well. And we got some criticism regarding this as well, of course. But in the end, I still think that was the best. And it was like a pilot project as well, in this sense as well, because nobody has done it before. Actually, the Lord Mayor's office, they did something, but I think that was a bit different in the most important aspect, because if you want people to have an educated decision in the end, then you have to give them the proper information as well. And the council, the municipality can't take sides. And that's what we didn't do. I did, but not the municipality. It was a bit difficult for me as well, because I believe that if the government asks us something, even if it's a right-wing or left-wing government, I think that the statesmen on the highest levels, they shouldn't take sides, and they have to, through their own channels, give the widest information as possible. So, for example, in our Terézváros magazine, in our local magazine, we had an 8 + 2 pages in English, 8 in Hungarian, 2 in English, because we have a 25% population who are not Hungarians in Terézváros. About this issue, we had a roundtable conference where we invited lobbyists as well and experts on the issue. So altogether, we had this 20% turnout. I think it wasn't bad. In Paris, for example, where they had a kind of a similar poll rather than a referendum regarding the, I think it was the parking fees, I think. That was like 7% the turnout. I mean, in the Budapest lakógyűlés, which was held here a year or two back, it was 9%. So I think it was a good pilot project, and we want to hold this every time that we think that we need to involve the public as much as we can in the decision.
Thank you. Yes, there was lakógyűlés, like this local referendum in Budapest this year as well, but people don't remember because it didn't participate. It wasn't well advertised. So it's also a note to self that we need to advertise. And I think that's also a benchmark, that it's the responsibility of all politicians to disseminate the information, because sometimes these referendums are used as leverage that people don't participate, but they don't participate. And in many municipal, benefits, for instance, people don't take them because they don't know about them. So this is also a question of language, accessibility, and whether you want to talk to the constituents at all. And my question to you, Marisa, you are part of the network of municipalities for change. So my question to you would be how municipalities themselves work across the aisle, and how do you, what has been the most effective way to foster this kind of collaboration, and where do you see that there's more potential in cross-municipal collaborations?
I want to say that Madrid is not in Eastern Europe, but we have similar challenge to those in many regions under authoritarian or heavily neoliberal control, like the one led by Popular Party in Madrid, for example. In this context, municipalist movements face growing centralization of power and deeply entrenched hierarchies that make citizen participation difficult. At Más Madrid, we believe that transforming the cities involves rethinking urban space and place of social justice with a feminist vision of space and public policies that promote universal access to housing, education, healthcare, and culture. A key aspect is participatory democracy. The voice of the citizen must be central to decision making. It's not just about voting every 4 years. We need to create real spaces for participation, like participatory budgeting, to ensure communities are actively involved in decision making. In our local governments, we work to ensure communities have an active role in building policies that directly affect them, such as economic empowerment for women and vulnerable groups. Cities must be key players in creating and fostering a more equal society. We must be able to manage our local governments effectively and efficiently, so that we can become an example for others, protecting and safeguarding public goods like education, healthcare, culture, and social service. In short, responsible management and a strong defense of the public sector against privatization and corporate profit. From left-wing municipalities, we have the capacity to be the driving force for change and at very challenging international moment where the rise of the far right is strong. We have a duty to offer an alternative model that faces crises and resolves them in a fair, democratic, green, and feminist way. What we are facing is both a challenge and an opportunity that we must take on with courage and commitment.
Thank you. I think the connecting dot is in all of your stories. I'm sorry, Aiden, do you want to add something? Because I forgot to write a specific question for you. But if you want to add something, okay. So the connecting point is housing and public goods. This is something that all of you have dealt with in your own particular way. And this question is to all of you. How do you, when we talk about the protection of public goods or public spaces, the protection of the right to live in a safe community and not among foreigners in a building. So how do you make sure that, first of all, you can explain the fiscal consequences of your demand? So how do you explain to voters that this is actually, even though it might sound that we have less income for revenue for the city hall because we have less taxes from Airbnb, how do you explain to voters that this is actually good? And do you use these campaigns or issues to collect more people into your movements or organizations? Are these things able to have more people in the organization? And first, we can start with you.
Well, in Zagreb, it was kind of a ridiculous situation with Airbnbs. On the local level, we are quite limited in what we can do. You said you banned the Airbnb. We don't have that authority. But we can tax Airbnbs and we decide what the tax is. But there is also national limit on how much that tax can be. And in Croatia, that tax was 200 euros per year. So I mean, we put it at the maximum, and there was a strong opposition from the media and everything, but it didn't do anything. I mean, of course, because to expect that such a low taxation could do something in that sense, it's ridiculous. So we did everything in our constitution that we could, but it was more to send a message that that's something we are against and that we are going to fight on the national level to change those, but not so much what will happen on the local level. On the other hand, we are managing our public housing. We had around 6,500 units. First thing we did was we forbade the city to sell those anymore, because in recent years a lot of those units were sold, and we started building some more, and we redeveloped the rules how you can give, to whom you can give public housing. In previous years, a lot of deserving citizens, let's say, were in public houses, and not so much those who needed affordable housing or social housing. So we redeveloped rules, and we redeveloped the payment method. So we introduced the payment method that everybody is paying according to their ability. So those who have the lowest income pay almost nothing, but those who are already in public houses and have huge incomes, they will be kind of taxed in a way. They will have to pay almost more than its let's say market rate. So they would be motivated to leave those apartments, because we have only like 2% of public houses in the whole city. So we really wanted them to be for those who are in need. although if we had, of course, a lot, like 50% or something, the ideal would be for those who get public housing to stay in there. But we are not at that level. So I think policy should also be changed according to the context. On the national levels, we are experiencing now something that we are glad. The ruling party started to talk about housing. They're proposing new housing regulation, and they're proposing new housing tax, because Croatia is one of the countries in Europe that doesn't have housing tax, and that led to something that is really horrible, that we have a lot of vacant houses, a lot of vacant apartments that are vacant not because they're bad or moldy or old or something like that. They're vacant because they're a good investment. There is a lot of speculative capital in Croatian real estate market, which led to huge growth of the worth of those real estates, and huge draw from all around Europe of capital to Croatian real estate market, which makes real estate unaffordable to local citizens, and at the same time the rents go up and so on. So the tax will be implemented, but also at the comedical level of maximum €8 per square meter per year. So will that stop speculative capital? We'll see. Probably not, especially when there is such a huge demand. When we are advocating for our policy, we are looking how to move as much of real estate from the market as we can. That's the main idea, because we see that even when the market is overflooded, and even when there is more units on the market, the prices really don't change. The insecurity of the people in those apartments doesn't change. They can be evicted really fast. Their rents can rise really fast, and we see only in the long term that we have to go towards demarketization of or decommodification of that rental market, and Airbnb is a big part of it because it lowers, of course, the number of units that are for housing, and I hope we can go in your direction, of course.
Just one thing, I think you raise a very important issue here, because we are from municipalities and we work on a local level, and we can do miracles, I think, in some senses, like democratizing our public spaces and introducing new aids and helping people. But this is what really stops us, and I guess bothers us, and me for sure, that there are these regulations, limits by the lawmakers, who are most often lobbied, I think, by these companies, by the private-driven interests. And it's crazy that you can't put a higher tax rate, for example, not even in Hungary, on empty flats. There is no sense in not allowing municipalities to do that, and it really drives me crazy, and it's a huge issue. That's why it's sometimes it's much easier, I think, to be a politician on a local level, but in this, I think we need to help our parties as well, and those organizations that could do something even bigger on a higher governmental level.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point, because a place like Wandsworth, international capital wants to eat it. You know, it's Zone 1, Riverside, London land values. It's like we are doing battle with Dubai. You know, that one of the most important industrial areas that has just gone through the biggest regeneration in Europe in the borough is owned by a Malaysian pension fund, Batsi Power Station, right? So we as a local authority are trying to come up with ways in which we can take on these very powerful international global forces. We have 32,000 social units, which again, desperate for people to buy up because the value of them is so high. So we're constantly having to fight the right to buy policy, which is a national government policy. But we do have certain powers, and it becomes about political will. So on planning, on private sites, private lands, we set a local plan, which means if a private developer wants to develop on that site, they have to build a certain amount of affordable housing. And then there are all kinds of different types of affordable housing. There's the good housing and the social housing, or there's shared ownership, which is like a home ownership scheme where you have to be on combined income £90,000 sometimes, or intermediate rent. So these higher, which no one who needs housing in my borough can afford this affordable housing. So politicians decide who they're going to prioritize, but there's loads of lobbyists and there's loads of corporate interests that are constantly trying to erode that local planning power. So it feeds a bit back to that consultation program, because we are going to push to the absolute maximum 50% affordable housing with a 70-30 social tenure split, and the rest an intermediate rent that like a young person who maybe won't get access because they're not poor enough for social housing, but needs housing because they can't afford market. It's like warfare. And national government have given us the powers to do this warfare, but we know that any consultation we do, we can't outspend a multi-million-pound developer that will just flood that consultation. And so some of the referendums we do, we lose them. So private landlords, for instance, we did it's not a referendum, we did a consultation. Do you want Iden from the council to license so you have to pay a tax? And the landlord lobby just boom. But we're going to do it because it's a consultation. I don't have to listen to the landlord lobby if they flood the consultation. So what we do is we break up the results. This is what the landlords say, 70% against, tenants are for it, homeowners are for it, every single third sector organization, civic institutions for it. Okay, the majority were landlords that fed in, but we're going to decide not to, because sometimes you can't just go with the referendum. Sometimes you just have to take the political hit and say, we think this is the right thing to do. And then you try and show the public how that dynamic works. It can be politicizing. So the developers hammer us, and we now wear it as a badge of pride. So if the media comes for us, if the PR companies come for us, we go out to our residents and we say, look, when we tried to get social housing, this is what they did. So there was a big grand opening of the Battersea Power Station. Every political figure was coming to open. We said, we aren't going to go because our job is to represent the interests of our residents. There are live planning applications with this developer. It wouldn't be right for me to take hospitality, to have champagne with the King and Queen of Malaysia as they cut the red ribbon. That's not what I'm in politics to do. People were furious. The media did things about it. Even the trade union movement came out and attacked us because their workers had helped to build some of these private flats. But we said, look, we're not going to go to this event because our job is to represent you and we don't want there to be a conflict of interest. And that was it came off well. We thought it was going to be a political disaster. But actually residents turned around and were like, yeah, I don't want my councillors having champagne down at the power station. We want them to be fighting for us. So we try and unbalance sometimes. And on housing, I think mass politics is with us. I think even though you get hammered by the Airbnb, once you've had the conversation, once you do the real hard work of grafting, people come round because their kids can't afford to live. Their mortgages are going up, even if they got their own home. They know that social housing is a problem because they can just see it in their communities just changing overnight. So housing, I think, is an area where the left can take political risks because it's a politicizing moment. Even if we lose the fight or the fight becomes really vicious, we can say, look, this is what we're up against. Come join us. So that's where I take it, even if things seem really, really difficult.
Just as a funny anecdote, yes. Yes, you go ahead.
In Madrid, we have a serious housing problem too, where housing has become the most valuable speculative commodity. In the city of Madrid, large owners of 5 or more properties, as well as mutual funds, are concentrated in Madrid. Our president protects them because she defends the liberal model of Milei in Argentina, where the housing market is unregulated. The government of Madrid has rejected our proposal for a tourist tax, for example. From Más Madrid, wherever we hold local governments, we are working to implement the Vienna model We invited Michaela Kauer, the former deputy mayor of Vienna, to share her insight. We are running a powerful campaign to control rental prices, implement indefinite rental contracts, shut down tourist apartment, as has been done in New York or Barcelona, and build public housing.
The question of the force of lobbyists and the inexistent interest of politicians to thematize issues that are difficult. I think that's the two reasons why in Hungary, for instance, the issue of vacant apartments is untouchable because politicians are just not brave enough. And this was the case with Airbnb. People we know in power have been unable to discuss this issue in public because they're afraid that they would lose the support of certain lobbyist groups or just only the constituents because they have a different class demographic. So, which is reasonable. It's just something that we have to deal with in the left, that we always have to fight the lack of bravery from politicians and the conflict of interest many, many times. And I wanted to ask you last, Maya, whether you had a great set of experiences with the lobbyists, and how do you, if you have, if the situation is really hard, like what are the expressions of resistance that you specifically use?
So this is a difficult question, as the housing crisis, as in your countries and cities, in Poland, is also very bad. If I'm correct, we actually have the highest mortgage rate in European Union at the moment. We have rent prices as high like in Berlin, but with a significantly smaller income. And over 60% of people up to 34 years old still live with their parents. When it comes to the social housing program in Warsaw, last year we built 400 new flats. And yeah, it gives you the scale basically. And we also have a huge problem with vacant houses. As you've mentioned, we have 200,000 of them in one city, in Warsaw. And it's difficult because when it comes to housing, we didn't have much success with pushing through the law changes or policies changes because the lobby is so strong. So apart from the reprivatization case I've already talked about. And so I think our biggest success in this area is the change of the public discourse. It's difficult because we have either conservatives or liberal media. So liberal media supports the ruling party, they don't want to criticize them. So at one point, we noticed that if we want them to start actually write about housing crisis and write about our issues, we need to have like this cool factor or sometimes even absurd happenings or stuff. Because then, it's not that risky, it's a little funny story. They start to write about it. And finally, they write more and more about it. And at some point, politicians cannot deny any longer that we have a housing crisis. They have to admit it. So, for example, one of the breakthrough events like this for us, I think it was 2 years ago, and it was also focused on the vacant houses problem. And the thing is that the city council meetings take place in the Palace of Science and Culture in Warsaw. So this is like a huge building in the middle of the city. It was commissioned by Stalin in the 50s. And a lot of rooms inside it are empty. They are not used. So we decided to treat it as this symbolic vacant house. And we basically decided to symbolically move in there. So we wait for the city council commission on the housing. We went inside because some area is actually open for tourists. So went there, and we were lucky because there was only one guard guarding the city council meeting, and there were quite a lot of us. So we just went past him. And we had in our backpacks packed carpets, laundry to hang, vacuum cleaner, I think even toaster to make some sandwiches. I was actually in my bathrobe. And we just organized there like a small flat apartment in front of the city council when they had a meeting. Because they didn't want us to talk about the issue. They didn't want to let us in. So we just went in. And at first, not a lot of media came because they thought we were joking. But actually, we were lucky because a couple of bigger media showed, and they just found other press offices to also come. So we had the media coverage, and when the press was there, the politicians couldn't deny talking with us. So we actually were able to raise the issue, and the topic started to be publicly present in the public debate. And now we can, talk about the tedious stuff. So actually concrete postulates, what we can do about the housing crisis to avoid it in the future and to change it. So, yeah.
Thank you. As a reminder, please collect your questions because in 5 minutes we're going to start the Q&A session. And for the last topic, I thought we should quickly touch upon the issue of green transition and urban development. All of your programs and movements or parties address the issue of the climate crisis, and all of your municipalities have to deal with it. But sometimes, more often than not, it's hard to explain why instead of social equity programs, you have to do green policy making. And sometimes people feel, at least in Hungary, that the issue of green transition, the climate crisis, is less of an urgent issue than social issues or social programs. So let's go in a round. How do you tackle the issue of climate crisis in your programs?
I mean, the usual way. We plant a lot of trees. We make public transport better. We make it broader. We make it more cheaper. We make it cheaper. We make it free for people that are retired and so on and so on. And we make more bicycle lanes. More parks, more stuff like that. Solar panels on all of our institutions, and yeah, it's sometimes is a struggle to explain it, especially bike lanes. People hate bike lanes for some reason, especially when they're taking car spaces. It's kind of our biggest problem at the moment, but. I think the weather is doing us favors all the time because these catastrophic events are happening more and more often, and people are seeing concretely on their life what kind of change is doing. So year by year we have to explain it less why we have to react, which is making our job easier, but everybody's life is getting worse in a way. I think also with all of those policies that we are making, we have to make sure that all basic services that city is providing stay affordable, stay the same price, or are getting lower, and that those services are covering more people, that they are better, and so on. So we that's kind of our in the last year our kind of a main campaign, because the government is pushing forwards with big reforms in tax system, where they want to lower income taxes of all people, and income taxes are the main budgetary factor of the cities, of the local government. And we are saying we don't want to lower our taxes. We want to have bigger taxes, especially for the wealthier people. But we want to guarantee that when this inflation is so big, all the prices are rising, that we don't rise any of our prices. That we don't rise prices of a kindergarten, the prices of the public transportation, prices of the elderly care, and we didn't. The water, the price of water stayed the same. Everything that is our control stayed the same, but at the cost that we didn't lower our taxes. And I think it's more difficult path, of course. So it's easier to say we're going to lower taxes, everybody will be happy. But I think as a left, we cannot fall in that trap. We have to say the taxes are going to make life in the city better for everyone. And we have to be strong on that solidarity argument. But we also have to advocate for the tax systems that are more just, that are taxing more Airbnb than the common citizens, that are taxing more vacant apartments than they're taxing people who live in small apartments. So,
Thank you.
We think the municipalism is a key tool in countering neoliberal policies. In Madrid, we are governed mostly by the Popular Party, the most conservative right-wing force, and one that uses the concept of freedom in a distorted way. For example, they sold the idea of freedom during the pandemic with the right to dream big, to dream beer on terrace. But at the same time, they mistreat public service like healthcare, education, culture, and social service. We think from the municipalities, we have to include projects like energy communities, solar power at the school, renaturalizing courtyards, adapting classroom to deal with high summer temperatures caused by climate change, animal welfare, etc. Resisting these regimens requires political struggle, but also constant work to democratize power structure and ensure that social movements are heard and respected.
Yeah, on the question of climate, so that's the only area where we've done people's assemblies, like real people's assemblies, because we were so worried about the right being able to capture a kind of working class populism against policies that are often seen as kind of green, middle class, hippies, kind of. So people's assemblies were really important, and our cabinet member for environment led on those, and they've actually been really helpful for us to get a kind of populist base in order to try and move forward on some things. We suffer the same challenges that, I mean, I've seen when I was coming here from the airport, I saw you've got e-bikes and things like that. Young people love them, old people hate them. You know, we've got these demographic challenges on, you're absolutely right, we put in a beautiful cycle lane, people go crazy, they want to kill us for it. So we're constantly navigating I think localism is really the hardest part of implementing some of these things. We're so backward in the UK. Like, you probably have food waste recycling. We don't have that. We just introduced it, right? Fantastic new green policy. It's caused chaos because English people aren't used to doing basic thing of putting the food rubbish in another bag, right? So like, and to be fair, our rubbish collectors aren't used to it. So like, the one municipal thing people care about is the rubbish, and then the Labour Council comes in and so green issues, the right are always ready to come and get us. And particularly in Britain, it's a similar thing with the US. You know, the cost of net zero is what's always being said. You know, working class communities are going to suffer cost of net zero. So we desperately use more civic participation to bring working class voices into those conversations. And also we just have to be smart. We have to be careful. I think we've tried to roll things out too fast. Sometimes we just need to do them, you know, ward by ward within the district rather than just go for a full scale intervention. And it's also forcing us to be more serious about our democracy, because there are some decisions like building a council housing. I think it's the right thing to do. People might be against it. I've got to get it done. On something like food waste, actually spending the time doing the people's assembly, listening, getting more ideas, we might be able to navigate that more, because it isn't about, are you going to do this, yes or no? It's about how you do it, how you implement. And so I think on the climate, it's actually been useful for our democracy.
I think our experience is quite similar, so maybe I don't want to repeat it, and I can give you two specific study cases, one quite successful, one not that much. So the first one is the A couple years ago, we created this, once again, a map of coal-fueled furnaces, so heaters in Warsaw. I can assure you that in Polish it sounds better. And we created it with specific locations of those coal-fueled furnaces. So people got quite moved by it because they could see how many coal is burning actually nearby their homes, nearby schools or kindergartens of their children. Because obviously coal burning is not only bad for environment, but also for health. And because of that, the city council actually passed a legislation to ban coal furnaces in the new building. But they also suggested the program of subsidies, allowances for poorer people who would like to change their coal furnace into the electric one. So that was a good, postulate. But the problem is that people in the old tenant houses in the poor districts don't want to have electric heating. Because a couple years ago, the central heating system in Warsaw was privatized. So since then, the energy bills were only rising. And we have a huge problem with thermomodernization of our buildings. 70% of buildings in Poland are not properly thermomodernized. They do not meet energy efficiency standards. So the good idea would be to do it first before changing, the heating system. And it also shows, often the complexity of different policies, that you cannot do only one thing, but also another follows. We also have, when it comes to air pollution, we actually, with Client Earth organization, we filed a complaint to the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. The complaint was regarding our voivodeship air pollution program, because obviously it sucks. In a shortcut, and is an interesting action because it's a very long-term process. We're probably gonna wait like another 10 years to see our case resolved. But if it does, and if we succeed, it's gonna have a huge impact on the whole Polish legislation. So this is good. And when it comes to the bad example, a year ago, we had a campaign actually with the people from the Wschód initiative, who are somewhere here, and for the energy communities, energy cooperatives in Warsaw. We wanted the city to implement them and to fund them. And I think this is a great solution because, first of all, it tightens the relations inside the building. It's a potential source of income. It makes tenants active members of Just Transition. But the problem is that it's a very complicated legal and also financial procedure. And for me, I think this is also the task for the EU legislators to pass the laws that are more easily accessible to different nations and also funding, accompanying it. I know that EU Greens are really supportive of it, but I guess in this particular case, we failed at explaining it in simple terms so people could actually understood what we were talking about, like what kind of solar panels, what kind of electricity plants on our roofs, what are we talking about? So, messaging is also important with all of our values and so on.
Well, I think in your question, you also alluded to the fact, or there is a conflict between social and green steps, or what a local council can do, or they have to decide if they do one or the other. And there is it's always a budgetary issue, probably. So if you have enough money, they can do both. But there are some parts of our work where it works both ways. For example, when we think of democratizing public spaces, it's the same when we decrease the number of parking spaces while planting trees. That I think works in both ways and helps also those who could not afford a car, but they want the public space for themselves as well, just for sitting on a bench and reading a book or whatever they want to do it. So mostly I think in our work, thank God, there is no conflict between these. And I must admit that as an inner city district, we are quite rich. We are quite a wealthy district and council, municipality that can probably do both. And we can introduce new aids besides doing things that we think that can also help our environment. But what I focus on in this sense is our health and people's health, because we can't really change the environment from such a small, tiny district of Budapest from our perspective. And although it is very important to, of course, kind of decrease our carbon footprint on a personal level and community level as well, but what I think the most important part of my job is in this sense is to help my people who live in the 6th district to get a healthier environment, because that's what I think sometimes we don't talk enough about, how it pertains to their own lives, to their own health in a very young age as well. And that is very important in the city environment.
Thank you so much. This is a very interesting and vivid conversation. I would like to give the floor to the audience if you have any questions. Aram. Levi has, yes, Levi has the microphone. He's there. No? Can you give it to him? Oda tudod adni az Aramnak?
Thank you. So my question is to Aydin. You said that you got involved a lot of, not involved people in your politics, etc., like unengaged voters or unengaged people. Could you talk about a little bit more about the tactics, how you did this, strategies? Was it knocking doors or anything else? And and this is it. And I just would like to praise Soproni Tamás, because he's the best mayor I think Budapest got. After maybe next to Pico, he's my boss. I have to praise him too. But yeah.
Yeah. I was 24 years old, and I didn't think. We never thought we didn't know whether we would win the election, right? So the purpose for me was 100% to go out and talk to as many people face to face about the area. And I focused in particularly on housing, because I thought that was something that was going to bring everyone from different generations into the same conversation. At the time, it was 2016, so we were 24 points behind in the polls. So it was like very bad conditions. It was like November by-election. We didn't think people would turn out. The strategy was get all of my friends from the local area who grew up to come out and door knock with me, make it really exciting, take lots of nice photos, do lots of social media, make it feel very movementy. And it was the beginning of an organization also called Momentum, where we were testing out some of the newer memberships to the Labour Party. So there was a surge in local membership, and we called many of them up and we got excited. But we also built really good relationships with the older members who'd been there for a long time. I'd actually joined the party before Corbyn, so there was a perfect balance for me to speak to both sides and try and get as many people out and about. That face-to-face, like we had a rule, which was you try and speak to... So we now run the whole borough, which is 350,000 people, but in each ward there was about 10,000 voters. And so we obviously had a very strong electoral strategy where we targeted our main support because it was a by-election, so we knew turnout would be low. And we tried to speak to them 3 times. So we were out day, night, knocking doors. I, as the candidate, would hang back. So I'd have a crew of different teams. The moment the door opens, I'm going in, shaking hands, speaking, so that I'm never waiting on an empty door. We were turning up to community meetings, asking difficult questions of the existing Conservative councillors. It was a short turnaround, and then we just built from there. So we used that model going forward. The election that we won in 2022, where we took the whole borough, the whole district, that was painful because I couldn't work my area because we were going just for the swing seats. So we did a very ruthless strategy where we actually left our base for a bit, and our base felt a bit neglected, and we just hammered these 3 target seats out of 60. And that that for many of us who had been in the movement for a long time felt difficult, but it was the right calculation because we got above the line. So it's much harder than it was now to build mass participation because the party's changed a lot. And some of the ways that we still believe in it. We still really believe in it. A lot of members have left, but I still try and actively encourage members to join, to stay, to be involved locally, because I think you have to be in it if you want to change things. I don't know what to say.
Does anyone else want to add? Any other questions? We can also, because we started late and we want to make up for it. So if you don't have anything else to ask, this is your last chance. Yes. You? Oh, sorry. You. There's some. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming here and sharing your perspectives. I really appreciate that. When I think of local power on a municipal level, I think of resilience, I think of diversity. And I wanted to ask if either of you could share examples of community projects that really show how people from many different perspectives with many different interests can kind of come together and show the power, the local power that a community has on a municipal level. Might be a bit of a general question, but yeah, any kind of, lighthouse projects that you can think of that really show these projects working well in a common space, in a public space.
Well, I think the best example in Zagreb is that we really have a lot of those neighborhood councils. We have around 117 neighborhood councils, and they're under 17 wider neighborhoods. Anyway, in those councils, there's around 1,000 people who have been elected to be there. And what we tried to do was to give more power to those local councils, and they have really now some authority to make programs that they think are most valuable for their communities. That means that on the periphery of the city, there is now more cultural stuff happening, more shows, more educational things happening. I think just this weekend there was some language lessons for foreigners that was organized by the 5 people that are in that local council, which is really unexpected. Let's say we expected they will always say, okay, let's build a bench, or let's fix the children's playground or something like that. But they went the other way. Most of them went to broaden some cultural things in their neighborhood, which is really lacking, because most of the things before was happening in the city center, and if you wanted to see something, you had to go to the city center. Now they took the power to have just more things close by, which is great.
Yeah, just very quickly on the diversity point, I'd say that we have so I'm Muslim, and we have quite a large Muslim population in Battersea, particularly from the Somali community. And I'd say that one of the most important parts of the way that we built enough support within the community was making sure that we worked individually with various community organizations, faith organizations, and I don't want to say transactional, but we basically, if something goes wrong, they know that they can call my phone and they can have direct access to try and get in touch with various services and various service support, which is really helpful because be it through translation, there are so many amazing community leaders that have their own power. It's not for me to come and try and represent that community. It's to build working relationships and links. And so when we have very serious issues or issues where we want to get something fixed, there's a way and channels through which people can get access to the council. Whereas in previous regimes, I don't know if that was the case or whether those channels existed.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think we all learned a lot. We at Szikra can take away a lot from this conversation. So thank you very much. Thank you for the participation. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks for tuning in. To find every other episode, follow our feed. This episode was produced by Lab-Left-nek. Thanks to everyone who made it possible.
Zengünk harang, veled együtt zeng a szívem.